now. While thou seest the warfare in your mind to come, everybody don't get the privilege to come in the presence of the Lord. My hand is upon your life.
Hello to everybody coming
My
in.
hand is upon your life.
Come on in, y'all. We're going to get started in a
That's why
second.
Satan can destroy you. That's why Satan can destroy you. Because I chose you before the foundation of the world. I chose you. Come. You're my chosen. You see, this thing that you're going through, this trial that you're walking through, it's not there to destroy you, but it's there to purify you so you can come. Oh, my child, know that all things work together for the good to them that love the Almighty God. So come on, go with me.
Peace, everybody. Hello to everybody coming in the room. Hello to everybody coming in the room. I know that I was supposed to be on yesterday, but we got done making and filling orders really late, guys, and so I waited until today, but I hope that you all have been having a wonderful new moon in Scorpio. We have a lot to get through, and so I'm not even going to say I'm not going to keep you long. I'm just going to try my best to get through this as quickly as I can, but as thorough as possible. Welcome to each and every person. My name is Munera Holland Bay, and I am one half of the sanctuary here at Holland Spices. On the other side is my amazing, magical, incredible wife, who I call Mrs. Holland, but you all can address her as Akila Assad Holland. She is resting today. She bumped her head yesterday against the cabinet, and we think that she suffered maybe a mild concussion, and so she's resting. And so I ask that you all send your healing vibes to Mrs. Holland, that she has a speedy recovery. Welcome to today's Art of Ritual, which is a solar eclipse new moon in Scorpio at 2 degrees, and we also have Pluto being direct now. And so today's Art of Ritual is titled The Moses Alchemical Encounter, and so we're going to jump into the downloads that Spirit was bringing through as it relates to Moses, and how this astrological energy that we're all experiencing is in, line with the planetary bodies and what they're telling us, okay? So happy new moon. I hope that you all, and those of you who will join us later, I hope that you all have been having a wonderful, wonderful day, and that your new moon, that this eclipse has so far really been causing you to really get to the heart matters as it relates to the things that you need to release. I know this eclipse energy was definitely hitting me in my natal chart, and it had me doing a lot of just reflecting, especially as it relates to relationships as it relates to how I show up in relationships, and also taking a chance in a moment to assess how maybe the people and the things around me, how they have been serving me, and whether they have been serving me, and if not, working on lovingly releasing the things that no longer serve me go, so that I can continue to expand and can continue to attract the life that I most desire, right? And along with those releasing, also doing some reflecting and finding any residual residue on certain heart matters that maybe I thought that I fully released, but didn't really fully release them. And so doing a lot of surface cleaning, right? And also deep cleansing, so that I had a chance to really get rid of a lot of the residue that may have been lingering on relationships that may have ended abruptly, friendships that may have ended abruptly, and just also just picking apart and unpacking my own trauma that resurfaced during this new moon in Scorpio, paired with a solar eclipse. Okay, and so, like I said before, we have a lot to get through, and so I'm going to jump right in. Hello to each and every person who will join us and catch the playback. If you know someone who could use this art ritual on today, feel free to pop back on, but let a friend know that the Highland Spices Sanctuary is live, okay? Update with the Sanctuary really quickly before we jump in. Make sure that you check your emails for your tracking numbers. There were orders that have gone out, so make sure that you check your email to know when your package is going to be getting to you. And for those of you who have ordered but you haven't received any update information as it relates to your order, be sure to just stay close to your email. We have orders that are going to also be shipping out on tomorrow. Lampdomancy readings, those of you who have purchased your Lampdomancy readings know that those readings will be going out via email this weekend, so make sure that you all are sticking close to your emails so that you are getting the updates as it relates to your orders. Okay, sanctuary business taken care of. Okay, let's jump in, y'all. So today's art ritual is titled The Alchemical Encounter of Moses, right? Or the Moses Alchemical Encounter. And before we jump into deciphering the message as it relates to Moses, I want to jump into first the planetary energy that really brought these downloads forward to me, and the planetary energies that are playing a part as it relates to this Moses alchemical encounter that we're all having, not only on an individual level, but as well on a collective level. And one of the ways in which Spirit really came through to really put the message of Moses on front page, child, was through the character of Kanye West. No matter how you feel about Kanye West, no matter how you feel about what he said, no matter what stories you build in your mind to make sense of the messages that Kanye were being given, none of it matters. Because Kanye was playing a major role in sending a major message to those who have an ear to listen to what Spirit is saying, right? Especially right now in this season. We're shifting into eclipse season. The new moon started on yesterday, as well as the new moon. The eclipse season started. And so we are now working our way into a heavy season of transformation, of death and of rebirth. And it really will behoove us to really begin, those of us who know that the call of ascension is around you and that you've been getting the message of ascension, is really going to be important and in a very pivotal time for us to become very serious about the things of Spirit. Let me slow down, because I feel my energy just, and so let me slow down. We are really coming into a season where it's going to be very important for us to become very serious about the things of Spirit, and to become very serious about what our interpersonal journeys look like as it relates to our spiritual walk, right? And so this eclipse season is really going to really begin to put the reality that we're no longer playing in the realms of materiality, and that we're shifting into the realm of the Spirit on and center stage, right? As we come into this eclipse season, many of us are going, especially those of us who have not begun to do the work of self, right? And we're still playing on the material plane of our senses, playing in the material plane of sensation, playing in the material plane of just generating our personalities and just creating realms that is not that we're out of season in, right? Spirit is really desiring for us to become very serious about the nature of our souls, right? And the nature of where this planet is shifting spiritually, right? And the alchemical process or the alchemical encounter that Moses experienced in the book of Exodus, also playing out in the book of Numbers, and you can also see it playing out some in the book of Leviticus. This alchemical encounter that Moses had in these 3 chapters is almost a mirror reflection to what us as a collective and us on an individual level are going through, which is really facing the reality of what we're in, facing the reality of the slave minds, the slave realities that you still find yourself in, playing into not handling your business so that you can be self-sufficient, so that you can be independent of this governmental system that has you under your thumb, the same rhetoric that we've been spewing for the last 5 years or so. If we go back even further, the master teachers that came before us was also speaking about the beast that is this government system. And so now we're in a time where Spirit is really going to begin showing us the collapse and much of what we see, many of us never thought that we would see during our lifetime. And so instead of us living in la la land, instead of us, operating in bliss, it's time for us to really come online so that we can really see what's happening around us. I brought up the Kanye West character because those of you who were so offended by what it is that he said is your first clue that you have not begun to do the work of self, and that you have not begun to do the work of really assessing where we are in the world and what we are attached to as it relates to this system, right? And what I love so much about a lot of what Kanye West talked about was a lot of his speech, or a lot of his communication was directed towards the Jews, right? Or at the Jews, or about the Jews. And so now we have this conversation beginning where people are now being faced with the question of, well, who is the real Jew? And who is the counterfeit? Well, as we go through this art of ritual, we're going to begin to see that question be answered, right? So that when you walk away from this conversation, you're not caught up in the debate of whether Kanye West was right or wrong, right? And instead, what you take away is the message of what his communication was sending, right? Which was really the message of ascension again, right? And not only the message of ascension, but the alchemical process that the body and the soul is experiencing right now as we go through the alchemical change of the planet, as well as the alchemical change of the body and the spirit. And so let's jump in. So this solar eclipse and new moon in Scorpio is occurring at 2 degrees Scorpio. And so this planetary energy is really giving us insight into what aspects of the infrastructure of the collective is being dealt with, right? And what aspects of the collective as it relates to the individual is being dealt with. And so this solar eclipse is hitting at 2 degrees Scorpio. And when we look at the 2nd degree in Scorpio, which I learned from my sister, Egyptian's Eye Tarot, as well as Mistress Tamara here on Instagram. She is an astrologer, an astrologer that is in study. And so she helps me with a lot of my downloads that come in when Spirit is trying, and then she comes in the room, my sister T, who I'm talking about. She helps me with a lot of connecting the dots as it relates to how my downloads come in and how Spirit is connecting my downloads to the astrological bodies as they're operating and moving around. And so my sister helped me to understand that each degree as it relates to astrology also carries its own symbolism. Hello to everybody coming in the room. I'm so happy to see everybody. Welcome to Art of Ritual. This new moon / solar eclipse at 2 degrees Scorpio. Welcome to our Art of Ritual titled The Alchemical Encounter, or the Moses Alchemical Encounter. Today we're going to be delving into the Moses encounter and how this Moses encounter energy is relating to this Scorpio new moon as well as this solar eclipse energy. And so welcome everybody. So my sister T helped me to understand that every degree in astrology also carries its own symbolism. And so when we look at the second degree in Scorpio, or when we just look at the second degree in astrology, the second degree carries the domain of Taurus, of the energy of Taurus. Until you can tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong or not. When we look at the energy of Taurus, Taurus domains deal with patience, our sensual pleasures, earthly pleasures, or how we store ourselves, or storing, storage. Taurus deals with finances. It deals with cash, our natural beauty. Taurus deals with collections, possessions, food, nature, being steady, stability, and also the voice, right? And so here we see this Scorpio new moon hitting at 2 degrees is really going to be dealing, in my opinion, of how I interpret it, is going to be dealing with the material plane, right? The material plane as it relates, and it's also dealing with our sensations, right? Or our pleasures, right? And so these things are going to play a part as it relates to deciphering the allegory of Moses. So keep this in mind, right? So let's keep going. So Scorpio is also ruled by the 8th house, which is the house of rebirth and transformation. This house is also related to Pluto, or is ruled by Pluto. Those of you who follow astrology will know that Pluto has gone direct. Okay, and we're going to jump into that a little bit later. But the energy of Scorpio being ruled by the 8th house as it relates to rebirth and transformation, and being ruled by Pluto, is a reminder of our emotional sensitivities. And so we are going to really begin to see the collective really take on an even more sensitive tone in nature, especially as we move into 2023, which universally is a 7-year. Those of you who joined us on our last Art of Ritual, you will know that we delved in a little bit into what we can expect from 2023, aka Universal Year 7. Metaphysically, the Universal Year 7 translates into the year of silence. And so as we come into the year of silence, before we get there, the collective as well as the individual is about to go through a transformation of our emotional sensitivities. And so if you find yourself becoming more sensitive, if you find yourself being more sensitive to conversations, or being more sensitive to other people's energies, now is the time for you to really begin understanding the symbolism of the hermit, and taking on the symbolism of the hermit, okay? This Scorpio energy is also going to be emphasizing all of our past feelings and bringing up past feelings. Like I was saying earlier, the new moon was in its shadow phase, I had a lot of unpacking, and a lot of things from the past begin to come up that I thought that I had made peace with, but Spirit brought me to another level of unpacking and of undigging. And so during this new moon in Scorpio, I really invite you guys to really begin to go back and to reassess your past feelings. Or if you find past feelings, past emotions, past experiences begin to come up, this Scorpio new moon is going to be a wonderful time for you to really begin assessing that and making plans to really begin solving the issue of healing, your wounds, right? Or healing your past transgressions, right? Or healing the past, the ways in the past in which you've stung your own self, bringing in that Scorpion energy. Maybe a lot of the feelings or a lot of the scenarios that are coming up from the past has nothing to do with people, and it has everything to do with yourself, how you've wounded your own self, how you've wounded your own egos, how you wounded your own stabilities, how you've wounded your own emotions, right? How you've wounded your own energetic physical body, right? So this Scorpion energy is really going to be inviting you and inviting us to really begin to deal with the self, right? Along with this energy, we also see this the solar eclipse coming in, which is an exact degree to Venus, right? Which is really suggesting a rebirth of the heart space, right? And inviting us, right, to really begin to heal the matters of the heart if you've been blocked in this area, right? When we think about the heart, we also have to deal with the subconscious, right? And if we're dealing with the subconscious, this is really dealing with the memory mind, right? And so if you find that you have a lot of scenarios coming up from the past, the spirit is inviting you to really begin to deal with matters of the heart so that you can deal with memory, right? To really begin weeding out memories that are still imprinted on the heart space. And because they're imprinted on the heart space, it's recreating or regenerating itself in new people and new experiences, okay? So in the solar eclipse being conjunct Venus is really inviting you to invite in the energy or welcome in the energy of a new path as it relates to your heart, right? Maybe you've been operating, very frivolously with your heart. Maybe you've been giving your heart or opening up your heart too easily to people because you desire connection. I could say that I've done that. And every time I've done that, I've learned a great lesson, a great hard lesson in the end, right? But those lessons where in some ways I feel like they set me back, in a lot of ways it opened up new paths, and it continues to open up new paths, right? Even in the unpacking that I was charged to do as we came into the shadow phase of this new moon. And I give thanks again for my sister T. You guys can find her under here as Mistress Elmara, or you also can find her on her spiritual page or her metaphysical page or her spiritual works page, Egyptian's Eyes Tarot. She's always dropping wonderful, wonderful information and timely information. And if nobody told you, shit, don't miss. Okay? And so my sister was really my mirror, as well as Mrs. Holland, over the last few days of really beginning to unpack my emotions, right? And to really begin to deal with the matters of the heart that I was neglecting, or just the matters of the heart that my mind just wanted to completely ignore, right? And when we do that, we stunt ourselves, we stunt our growth, right? And not only do we stunt our growth, but we make the path longer, that we have to walk of getting to our promised land, right? Because we want to be stubborn, because we don't want to be the bigger person, because we don't want to feel our emotions, because we don't want to cry. I have a thing about not crying, right? And I know that it comes from growing up in childhood and being, a very sensitive child, and that not necessarily being welcomed by first my family, and first learning that being sensitive wasn't a good thing to have, just growing up in the family dynamic that I came up in. And then that being validated and just functioning and moving it about the world, and being very sensitive and not really understanding why I felt everything so much, or felt things way more than other people felt around me, right? And so the world right, will teach us that our sensitivities are bad things, when really our sensitivities are the first markers of our boundaries, right? They're the first ways in which we feel the sensations of our boundaries. And so me not feeling safe enough to cry was really something that I had to not only process, but that I really had to feel over the last few days. And I give thanks to my sister T and to my wife, because they were mirrors, safe mirrors, that allowed me to process that energy and to be able to say, you know what, I'm not okay. You know what, I am still holding on to this, that, and the third. It is safe for me to cry. It's safe for all of us to cry, especially in the time that we're in right now, when there's so much heavy energy. There's so many traumatic experiences that are thrown at us every single day. How can we not be sensitive? And then one of the ways in which we cut off our sensitivities is by being completely numb to the experience of life. Being numb to the experience of people, right? Being numb to creating our own worlds and chasing after our own visions, because, well, the world looks like it's going to shit. And even if the world looks like or feels like it's going to shit, you still have to be brave enough to build in spite of, right? Because Spirit is bringing us and has been getting us all to a place where we believe in ourselves enough to see God. That we believe in ourselves enough to assume the position of God. Because when we assume the position of God, right, you take on the accountability of the Creator in your own experience. Then there's nobody to blame should your vision or your story go haywire. The only person that we can then look at is ourselves, right? The underdog aspects of our experience, right? The triumphant aspects of our experience, the climax aspects of our experience, right? And the destruction aspects of our experience. We are responsible for them all. And that was one of the messages of Moses. Moses was the lawgiver, right? Moses was the lawgiver. And in a lot of ways, as we move forward, we're going to begin to see the laws in which we grew up learning and becoming accustomed to change. And Spirit is really beginning to direct us back to the natural laws, which was really the laws of understanding spirit and operating in our spirit body. Right? Not getting stuck in the matter of material. Right? We've been stuck in the matter of material for a very long time, living off of our sensations, living off of our pleasures, right? Living off of our beauty and our food, Taurus, right? Finding our stability in the matter of material. But then learning that once you achieve it all, once you gain it all, once you fuck it all, right? Once you drug it all, once you experience it all, what ultimately matters is how and what you did and how you did right by your spirit. How you elevated and ascended yourself in this lifetime. Some of us can look at the experience of Kanye and see him in the nature of Scorpio. Achieving it all, experiencing his pleasures, having access to his wildest imaginations. And then some people could look at Kanye now and say that he is sabotaging himself. And so he's stinging himself. But what we see in the spiritual eye, we see Kanye taking on the nature of spiritual transformation. He is in the energy of spiritual transformation. And that's the ultimate lesson of Scorpio. Stinging itself until it produces spiritual transformation. Afflicting itself. Testing its boundaries. Right? Living in the shadows. Experiencing the shadows. Experiencing its darkness. Going to the edges of its darkness. Only to ultimately discover itself. Right? And so Scorpio is the sign of transformation and evolution. And this is where spirit is ultimately trying, not trying, but ultimately is pushing the collective. And everything that is not producing a new frequency will eventually vibrate out because it has no choice. You're not producing a new frequency. Most of the collective is not even interested in producing a new frequency. They're stuck in building their tomorrows off yesterday's failures, off of yesterday's understandings, off of yesterday's theologies, off of yesterday's works. When spirit is saying, understand where we come from, understand how in which we move through history, but there's nothing to repeat. When Moses came onto the scene, he didn't resurrect an old law. He came to bring a new one. Right? This new moon in Scorpio is not coming to reintroduce you to yourself. It's coming to introduce you to a completely different version that you've never even met. This ascension is not going to look the same way on everybody, but it carries the same frequency. And spirit is saying, I don't know you by your name. I know you by your frequency. I know you by your spirit. And spirit doesn't lie. Spirit will always operate in truth. And you will know that it's truth because it's all echoing the same message, right? So this new moon is really asking you what in your life needs to change drastically, right? Not kind of lukewarm changing it, not, oh, I'll change it just for this week and then in a couple weeks you revert back. What in your life needs to change drastically? And how much do you need to sting yourself in this season before you know? Okay? What do you need to let go of in order for you to get to the next level of your abundance? What do you need to let go of? And when we talk about abundance and prosperity, again, well, I'm not talking about monetary currency. When we look metaphysically at what prosperity translated into, prosperity translates into spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts. And not spiritual gifts for you to learn, for you to then go out and to exploit. But what spiritual, what do you need? What spiritual transformation do you need to go through in order for you to connect to the gifts that's going to bring you to the highest aspect of your transformation? Not learn the gifts in order for you to go out and provide the gift for another person. No. These spiritual gifts are ours and ours alone. And if spirit should so call for you to use your gifts to transform another being, then so be it. But for many of you, you are using your gifts out of order because they weren't meant for you to produce a work in another person. Your spiritual gifts were set up to produce a new work in yourself. So if you find that you're operating in your purpose and you're still being blocked, it's because Spirit is saying you're exploiting something that was supposed to produce a spiritual work in you. Not for you to gain currency off of. You're stinging yourself. You're stinging yourself. And if you sting yourself, let it be for a cause. Right? Let it have an intention. The intention to produce spiritual transformation. But if you're stinging yourself without regard, you'll ultimately self-destruct. Right? And self-destruction produces no works. It's like a seed, planting a seed into to soil that's not fertile. Okay? So what in your life needs to change drastically? Okay? Mars rules this eclipse. Okay? Mars is ruling this eclipse. And it's in its shadow phase in Gemini. And it's about to turn retrograde. This tells us that what we are seeing is not necessarily what it is. What we're seeing in our experience, what we're seeing in the collective is not what it is. And I think for a lot of people, I think that you are misunderstanding that you are not in war. I think for a lot of us, because you live in bliss, you are negating that we are at war. We are at war mentally. We are at war against our bodies. We are at war against our spiritual bodies. And for a lot of you, you have no protection. You haven't equipped yourself spiritually. You haven't equipped your homes. You haven't equipped your families. You're just going along with the get along. And as we go into this eclipse season, many of you are going to begin to see that it's not what you thought it was. As the world flips on its side, Gemini. As the world flips to its other polarity, Gemini. Many of you are going to see that it's not what you thought it was. And this needs to happen. Because as the collective on a massive level, you haven't learned yet that your government is against you. You haven't learned yet that your religious bodies, your religious infrastructures that are set up in place to give you God are working against you. And that's why many of you couldn't swallow the pills that Kanye was giving you, because you haven't dealt with the self. You haven't dealt with the reality of the world that you're living in. Because many of you are still waiting for somebody to show up and save you. And this eclipse season is coming in to pull the rug from under you in order for Spirit to introduce full spiritual transformation and evolution. And just because the planet is experiencing evolution, everybody and everything doesn't go into that evolution. So Spirit is also saying, stop trying to drag everybody else with you. Take yourself. Because you came into this existence as yourself and with yourself. You're on your spiritual journey and your spiritual walk as yourself and by yourself. And you have to be able to trust the stability, the foundations that you've built, so that when people and things start to go in a different direction, you stay the path. Straight and narrow is the path. Straight and narrow is the path. And that is one of the messages of this eclipse season. Straight and narrow is the path. Forget about what you're seeing happen around you. Get the messages. As a collective, you're dwelling too much on the words of what Kanye said, and you're not listening to the message that he was delivering. Moses went to the children of Israel and stood up on behalf of them and spoke to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." Kanye West sat before y'all on a platform that was not set up to speak truth. And he got on there and said, "Let my people go." And all you heard was Kanye West hates black people. That Kanye West hates Jews. That Kanye West disrespected the spirit of George Floyd. You heard the gossip of him and his family, but you didn't hear the root message, which was Moses speaking to Pharaoh saying, "Let my people go." Being able to speak truth to power, even when the world goes against you. Even if your family and your friends don't understand your journey, Spirit is asking, will you walk it alone? Right? So this eclipse is happening in Scorpio and it's hitting at the South Node. When I think about the South Node, hello to everybody that's coming in the room. The South Node is dealing with our past. So there's a lot of things that are being reassessed as it relates to the past. And not only as it relates to our individual lives, but we're talking about the past as it relates to foundational infrastructure. As it relates to law. As it relates to the things that you think give this country that we're living in its foundation. Moses, being the lawgiver, is coming in to say that Spirit is assigning new laws, that we're going to begin to see new laws come into play. And if you are not in the place where you need to be as it relates to being studied in law, being studied in astrology, being studied in numerology, being studied in understanding symbolism, because if you understand symbolism, you can read the world. Nobody can double speak to you because you understand symbolism. If you have not been studying the self, studying the mind, studying the spirit, studying the body, as these new laws come in, you're going to take on the law of man when Spirit has given and orchestrated and set up a whole new body of laws. And it's going to blow your mind when y'all see that the journey that Moses took the Israelites on as they went from Mount Sinai and eventually ended up in Moab. Moses took on being in his masculine energy and was transformed once he ascended into his feminine energy. So he went from being a Moab and was transformed into being a Moabitess. Right? And that's the feminine principle of ascension. We're going to get into that. Okay? So this solar eclipse in Scorpio hitting at the South Node is going to be opening new doors, bringing faded changes. Faded changes as it relates to the individual and faded changes as it relates to the collective, especially as it relates to government and laws, the breakdown of government, the complete collapse of government. And that's why I say for the collective as a whole is living in La La Land, because we don't see what's coming. If the collective as a whole saw what was coming, there would be no reason for you to party right now. Next year, we move into a universal 7-year, which is the year of silence. That means that this year is the year of demonstration. What are you demonstrating? And as we get deeper into this, I'm going to prove that this is the year of demonstration. Okay? So Pluto went direct in Capricorn. What does this mean? Pluto stationed direct at 26 degrees of Capricorn while approaching the end of its journey through the sign that it began in 2008. So where were you in 2008? What was happening? What was happening in the world in 2008, right? I don't need to give that to y'all. There's a lot of things that y'all don't need to be force-fed, because you can go and look it up yourself if you really want to know. So what was happening in 2008 as it relates to the culture? What was happening in 2008 as it relates to governmental structures? And what was happening in your life as it relates to you as the individual? What was spirit uprooting you from? What new chapters were opening, right? What people were exiting your life at this time? What were you asked to let go of in 2008? And if you're able to pinpoint these things, you will get a clear timeline on where you stand as it relates to where we are in time right now. Okay? So Pluto connects us to our deepest self. Okay? Pluto is the planet of transformation and of the subconscious. So this shift is bringing up the need to confront and to align with the truth. Okay? The truth of what's happening in the world, even if it's unpopular, even if it's scary, the truth of what's happening in your own individual worlds. This Pluto stationing direct in Capricorn is really inviting you to really deal with the truth of it all. To deal with the truth of your reality. Okay? While Pluto was in retrograde, it allowed us to deal with situations around karma, around structure, and around stability. Okay? So did you find yourself coming into your karma from 2008 until 2023? What areas of your life were made stable? And what areas of your life are still unstable since 2008? Okay? What new structures have you put into place since 2008? What old structures were serving you in 2008 that you no longer operate in, that you need to implement again? Okay? Pluto stationing direct is really urging us to really shift into the need to evolve, okay? The need to alchemicalize outdated ideologies and theologies, right? What old ways do we need to transmute? What old understandings do we need to transmute? One of the biggest transformations that we're going to begin to see is the complete collapse of the church. Not only the black church, but the Catholic Church. A complete removal of what you understand to be the Pope or the Maximus Pontiff. Right? When we look at the Pope and the job of the Pope changes time. It changes the calendar, how we understand the calendar, how we operate in the calendar, which calendar we operate. And if the Pope is altering the calendar, then you're altering the time. And they've done that already. Hi, my Asia. Hi, beautiful. How are you, my love? It's really good to see you, A. So seeing a complete collapse and the removal of what you understand the Pope to be and the power that the Pope carries, right? With the Queen transitioning, we haven't even seen the full play out of what her transition shifted as far as infrastructure on this planet, as far as government, as far as religious infrastructure. When she transitioned, the planet and the ways and how the planet operated transitioned with her. Right? And a new order of the divine feminine is being established. Right? Which is also the reason why Spirit is calling the divine feminine to come into order. Get out of your sensations. Get out of your distractions and really jump into your spiritual bodies. Because when the divine feminine shifts, the planet shifts. The masculine shifts. Everything has to come into order. Everything has to elevate. Everything has to transform. Okay? And so Pluto stationing direct 26 degrees of Capricorn, okay, is really alerting us of the end of the journey that it was taking through this sign since 2008 up until now. And now that we're here, what outdated paradigms do you need to release? Okay? What outdated paradigms do you need to let go of? What outdated beliefs do you need to let go of? What people, things, and experiences have expired as it relates to feeding your soul that you need to relinquish and let go of? Okay? Pluto also stationing direct exposes what is false, what is corrupt, and what is decaying, and the systems and the structures that we rely upon. So Pluto stationing direct in Capricorn is alerting you that there's a lot of things that are about to change as it relates to governmental structures. How you interact with governmental structures. Are you still going to be going out here when they say come out here and vote or die? Are you still going to be giving your permission for them to inflict genocide on you, only for y'all to come back later and realize 2 months after y'all voted the next president in that y'all been bamboozled? A change of outdated paradigms and structures, of outdated government, of outdated ways in which we operated in as it relates to government. Putting the divine feminine back into her place as it relates to government. That is what is happening as this world shifts and transforms. Spirit is putting us back into order. And as the head goes, so shall the body follow. Who is the head? You're looking at her. You're dealing with her from day to day. How are the divine feminine that you have access to, how are they elevating? How are they coming online? How are they following the law? How are they creating new law? How are they understanding and implementing law? And I'm not only talking about the law of the land. I'm talking about the law of the universe, the law of spirit. Right? There's one more thing that I want, one more planetary alignment that I want to get into before we shift into speaking about Moses. On October the 23rd, 2023, the Sun and Venus entered Scorpio, right? And along with that, Saturn was stationed direct in Aquarius. When this happened, the Sun and Venus was entering Scorpio, increased our need to penetrate what was beneath the surface and to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and of others. So much energy was really working its way up to really support where we are coming into this new moon in Scorpio. Right? All of the energy is really supporting us to dig deeper, to really uncover what hasn't been uncovered. And even when you uncover it, how can you go deeper, even into that, right? So when the Sun and Venus enter Scorpio, it really urged us to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. Scorpio season brings the spotlight on birth and death and rebirth cycles. The sun here illuminates something that we don't normally see or we don't want to see. So what are you not allowing yourself to see in your life? What are we not allowing ourselves to see as the collective? And a lot of what we are forcing ourselves not to see, the reason why you don't want to see it is because you don't want your reality changed. You don't want to lose access to your pleasures. You don't want to lose access to your sensations. But as long as we stay fixed on our sensations and our pleasures, we'll continue to stay trapped and fixed to this state of being. This state of being matter. Okay? Venus here in Scorpio invites us to deepen our relationships, to bring them to new levels. So, in what ways have you been deepening the relationships that are meaningful around you? In what ways have you been loving deeper within these relationships? And what ways have these relationships been inviting you to love deeper and to connect deeper? Okay? These alignments all together bring our attention to our conditioned response and fears that are holding us back from building and creating the future that we desire. This marks the last phase of a revolutionary shift in our social structures and our collective values. This is where we are right now. Being collectively shifted. And you can either shift with the collective or fall off in the debris. It will behoove us to come online and to welcome this transformation. Okay? To be mindful of how the social structures are shifting around us and how those social structures are benefiting us, or are they putting us in harm's way? And the social structures and the dynamics that we've been integrated into, some of it with permission, a lot of it without, Spirit is saying it's not serving us anymore. So Kanye West coming online and having a connection with the Jews, a conversation with the Jews, is really Source having a conversation with you. And we're not going to debate about who's the real Jew. Who cares? Is it going to get you up off this planet any faster? Is it going to make knowing who the real Jew is it going to fast forward the oppression that you willfully stay attached to every time you give your permission to the system? It's not. Right? Not in that way. So there's no need to debate who the real Jew is. In the end, it doesn't serve us to have that conversation. Right? But it does serve you to know what Jesus was speaking about when he was talking to the Jews and how it relates to us spiritually. we'll get into that. And so we're going to move along, guys. Let's jump into the Moses alchemical encounter. Let's go through very quickly. Those of you who are not versed in the Bible, let's jump into really quickly just going over what the story of Moses was. Moses was a Hebrew. He was born within the tribe of Levi. When the children of Israel lived, I'm looking at my notes, y'all. When the children of Israel lived in Egypt as slaves, he was one of the youngest of 3 children. He had a sister named Miriam and a brother named Aaron. Moses was also a special baby. When Pharaoh first gave the command for the Israelite slaves to put all of the firstborn sons to death, Moses' mother protected him by wrapping him up, storing him inside of a basket, and putting him in the Nile River in order to set the intention that he would arrive somewhere safe and that someone would see him and take him, and that's what happened. We can look at Moses being stored inside of the basket, that being his foundation, and then being placed into the water. We can liken that to him mooring the seas, right? Here, he's now being sent into the waters of himself, right? Confined in his stable environment, right? And so Moses was placed into this river where he went on this journey, only for the Pharaoh's daughter to find him. And when she found him, she took him in as her own, and he was treated as royalty, okay? He experienced all the luxuries of a royal person. He was raised in the palace. He had all access to appease his appetite or to appease his sensation. He experienced any kind of luxury that money could buy. He wanted for nothing, okay? But as Moses grew in the palace and grew up in this environment, Moses would come upon a Hebrew slave, right? And when he came upon this Hebrew slave, Moses, being in his race mind, those of you who follow us, you know that the race mind translates metaphysically into poverty, lack, division, anything that goes against love or unity. So being in his race mind, anything that will bring division. So him being in his race mind, he looked at this person who was beneath him, and he killed him. And so here we see Moses being in the energy of Scorpio, right? Having access to his pleasures, being a very mysterious man, ending up in this palace and with the Pharaoh's daughter in a very mysterious way. People not really knowing where he came from, not really knowing his background or the true nature of his nationality and where he came from. He carried a mystique about him, and so Moses, being in his Scorpion energy, he lived his pleasures. He experienced his pleasures to the highest possible capacity that he could experience them. And he loathed himself. He built himself up so much so to the point to where he took on the mind of feeling as though he was better than another person. And then feeling that he was better than another person, he took a life. And so he stung himself out of his own power, right? Out of his own need to feel or to appease his senses. So Moses became a murderer. And then he goes on this journey to where he finds himself on a mountain. And on this mountain, he's given the command to go and to save the very people that he had afflicted harm on, which were the Israelites. And so now we see Moses being taken through this beautiful phase of transformation where he goes from being overrun with power and overrun in his sensation, and now being given a task to transform, right? To do away with outdated paradigms and outdated race mentalities, right? And now he's given a mission. And in this mission took Moses to the desert where he spent 40 years. And in this 40 years, he will go through an alchemical encounter that will set him up eventually as being the lawgiver, right? Which ultimately gave him a very prominent status as it relates to history, okay? Now, we're not going to get into scripture and all of that stuff. What I more so want to do is to focus on certain words, because these certain words are going to let us know what Spirit is ultimately saying as it relates to this new moon in Scorpio. And so the first word that I want to get into is the mountain. Metaphysically, when we look at the mountain represents an exalted state of mind where the divine plan may be perceived and unfolded, a state of spiritual realization. Okay, so here we see the first place in which Moses finds himself as he runs into the desert to really get away from what he had become, being a murderer. We see Spirit take him to a mountain. And so the first story or the first symbolism of Moses and the first message of Moses is Spirit is trying to take us to a higher state of mind, or an exalted state of mind. Because it's not until we get to this exalted state of mind where we are exalted above our pleasures, exalted above our emotions, exalted above our appetites, exalted above our sensations, that we really begin to see the plan of God unfold, right? It's not until we have access to this exalted state of mind that we see spiritual realization begin to materialize around us. So the mountain goes on to say that the high mountain to which personality, and we're going to get into, I want to metaphysically look at personality. I have it open, y'all. Okay. So the high mountain to which personality comes and our spiritual uplifts and spiritually uplifts the consciousness of power over moral thought and all its earthly avenues of expansion. When we look at personality translates into the sum total of characteristics that man has personalized as distinct of himself, independent of others or divine principles. Okay? I'm going to read that again. The personality is the sum total of characteristics that man has personalized as distinct of himself, independent of others or divine principles. Okay? The mountain goes on to say, the symbolism of the mountain goes on to say that going up into the mountain to pray means that elevating our thoughts and our aspirations to a spiritual viewpoint. So here we see Spirit taking us all into the mountains of our mind. Okay? This is not a physical thing. This is a spiritual encounter. And so here Spirit is taking us all to the mountain, to the high mountains of our minds, okay? In order for us to elevate our thoughts, And these thoughts and their elevation are being transmuted into spiritual thinking, okay? Or thoughts of the spirit, or thoughts of pertaining to spiritual matters, okay? The word personality, as used by metaphysicians, is contrasted with the word individuality. Individuality is real. The personality is unreal. So when we look at individuality, metaphysically translates into the true self, that which is undivided from God. Okay? Individuality is the true self, that which is undivided from God. Okay? The personality is a veil or a mask worn by man that conceals the real, which is the individuality. So for many of you, you can't elevate your thinking onto spiritual matters because your personalities are in the way. Spirit can't get past your personality, right? Because it's really your personality that is drawing people. It's drawing money. It's drawing abundance. It's drawing success. But Spirit is saying, I'm trying to get you to your individuality. What is real, right? That which is separated from God. Your personality is with people, but the personality can veil you or cover you from accessing the real because you're walking around wearing a mask every day. People don't know the real you because you're wearing a mask. You parade out into the world like you have it all together, right? You're this spiritual or highly achieved person, but when you go into the privacy of your own home and with nobody else around, you hate yourself. You speak words of depression and of poverty and of lack, okay? Or of greed, of envy, of jealousy. You speak these things out of your real being, which is the individual, right? So many of you need to do away with the personality. See, I'm falling over. You need to do away with the personality in order for you to access the individual self, which is your oneness with God. For Kanye West, a lot of what we're watching is him detaching from personality and shifting into the individuality of himself, which is him taking a stand, whether you agree with his understanding of God or not, right? Or whether you have a deeper insight into what he means when he's speaking about God, right? What we're watching is him go through this transformation of removing the personality in order for him to come back into his oneness with God, which is his individuality. He's playing out the journey of the collective. He's playing out the journey of the individual, taking off the personality in order for you to pick up the individual, okay? Where are we doing this? On the mountain, on the high mountain. How do we access this? Through exalted states of mind. Through the exalted states of mind. That means getting out of surface things, getting out of the material, coming off of the material plane for a little while and only operating in the things of spirit until the bigger plan is materialized before you. Spirit is not going to give your personality the plan, the vision, because you'll exploit it. Spirit is going to give it to the individual. So until you're ready to face the individual, you'll be walking around lost in the wilderness of yourself, in the wilderness of the collective. Okay, is this making sense? Let's keep going. So as Moses was on this journey, okay, as he was on this journey of himself, as he was sent on this journey to save the Israelites, at one aspect of this journey, of the mountain, he comes upon what is called a burning bush. And out of this burning bush, Moses received what we know as the Ten Commandments. When we look metaphysically at the symbolism of the burning bush, it translates into the angel of Jehovah, or the flame of fire. Okay? The bush and the principle of the bush are all within the consciousness of man. So not something outside of you, not a man in the sky, okay? But this burning bush that is going to give you the commandments of source is found in the consciousness of man, okay? The consciousness of man. The bush also is a nerve center through which universal life runs like electricity over a wire. What do we know this as if we look at the physical body? The nervous system. How is your nervous system operating? Is it seizing? Is it going haywire? Is it out of balance? Is it causing dis-ease in your body? Is it causing malfunctions to your system? Okay? Is your electricity not operating properly? How is your nervous system keeping you? Right? And then what does the nervous system of the collective looks like? Is it seizing? It's seizing. It's seizing because it's coming online. And as it comes online, anything that's not likened to it has to black out. Right? It has to fall off. Okay? So the burning bush represents the nervous system. The nervous system. Okay? Let's move on to where the story of Moses took place. It took place in Egypt. And when we look metaphysically at Egypt, Egypt represents the darkness of ignorance. The darkness or the veil of ignorance is being removed from you as an individual and from us as a collective. We'll no longer have the ability to cast off our lack of transformation on the fact that you didn't know. Because Spirit is sending the message of dying to old structures, dying to old paradigms, dying, to old ways of thinking, old ways of being, old ways of operating, old ways of creating, dying to everything that no longer serves you in order for you to be rebirthed anew. So nobody this go around will be able to say, I didn't know. Because Spirit is sending the message in so many ways through so many messengers. The issue is many of you can't get past the messengers. But Spirit is sending the message. You got to get past the message, the messenger, in order for you to hear what Spirit is saying to the church. So Egypt translates into the darkness of ignorance or the subconscious mind. So Egypt metaphysically translates into the subconscious mind. Is your subconscious mind blackened in darkness? Or do you have the lamp, the oil lamp lit? Do you have your oil lamp burning in order for your thoughts to be illuminated? In order for your consciousness to be illuminated? In order for you to see the aspects of your subconscious that need to be cleaned out? In order for there to be no residue left behind to generate an experience that Spirit has delivered you from or delivered you out of. Okay? My sister RT says, Egyptians eyes 6, ignorance is the law. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. That goes for cosmic law as well as universal law. That's Scorpio, the darkness, the void, the deep psychological issues. And those are the aspects in which Spirit is really dealing with us as it relates to the subconscious. Okay? What aspects of your subconscious have you left in the dark? What aspects of your subconscious have been left in the void that you're not dealing with? What deep psychological issues are Spirit bringing up? One of mine was abandonment, feeling disposable, feeling like anybody can come along and neglect me, which is completely asinine because I would have to give you permission to do so. So that those deep psychological, deep-seated traumas that I've experienced through my life, those were things that came up to be, to be illuminated. Aspects that I was just allowing to exist in the darkness. Voids that I felt, that I still felt, that needed to be addressed properly, right? And again, none of this has anything to do with people outside of me more than it has to do with what's happening within. How have I internalized the things that I've experienced in my environment or in my upbringing? How have I internalized the traumas that I've experienced or the ways in which people have hurt me? And what ways have I hurt people from my own deep-seated psychological issues? In what ways have I done a disservice to people because of my own feelings of abandonment? And what ways have I done a disservice to my own self from not allowing myself to feel that darkness or to feel that void or to feel that lack or to feel that emotion? So Egypt represents the subconscious mind and dealing with the things of the subconscious mind as it relates to flesh consciousness, sense consciousness, and material consciousness. Let's look at these three things. When we look at flesh consciousness, it breaks down into expressing itself through the appetite. Are you operating in your flesh? Are you allowing the world that materializes around you to be crafted and built off your appetite? Because the appetite changes. The appetite can also be convoluted. The appetite can also run away with itself. I can say that for me and sugar. I love sugar. And I have an appetite for sugar. But if I know consciously how sugar affects the body, I'm choosing to operate out of my flesh by continuously consuming it in a manner, right? And that's out of control. There's no control over the appetite of sugar. So what aspects of your appetite are out of control? And that's where Spirit will show you where you're operating out of your flesh. Or your subconsciousness is building the world around you out of your flesh. And after a while, if you give yourself too much of what you love, it eventually makes you sick. Scorpio. Overdoing itself until it stings itself. Or until it stings the people, the places, and the things around you. Because you couldn't get a control of your appetite or of your flesh. And this new moon in Scorpio 333 is desiring for you to deal with your flesh as it relates to your subconscious. Let's look at sense consciousness. When we look at sense consciousness, this is a mental state formed from believing and acting through the senses, being diluted with sensation, Did y'all hear that? Sense consciousness is a mental state formed from believing and acting through the senses, diluted with sensation. Now, when we look metaphysically at the word sensation, sensation translates into a state of excited interest or feeling derived or a feeling derived from stimulation of the senses organs. Okay? Through cultivation of the spiritual nature, sensation is crowned with purity, and the Son of Man becomes aware of God's presence in his body as life, power, love, and joy. So there we see even the senses has to go through a state of transformation. Because if the senses doesn't go through a state of transformation, it remains in a state of being excited and stimulated, overly stimulated. And when you overly stimulate any organ in your body, or even overly stimulate the mind, it eventually crashes on you. So here we see Spirit is also letting us know that Egypt deals with sense consciousness, a mental state formed from believing in and acting through the senses, diluted with sensation. So what ways are you continuously operating in your senses? Are you making decisions with your senses? Are you making major life changes because of your senses? Are you leaving relationships because of your senses? Are you staying in relationships because of your senses? Because of your sensations? Because they make you feel good? Or because they affirm that you're not shit? Either way, you're operating out of your senses. Okay? Which is affecting and fixing your mental state to always needing to be zhushed up. Oh, we gotta feed her. We gotta keep her interested. We gotta keep his mind. We're gonna lose his attention. That's what the media is. That's what being entertained is. A continual keeping your mind and fixed in a continual state of sensation. Being deluded with feelings. Being deluded, okay, with experience. Hold on, y'all. I want to go back to that. So the sense is a mental state formed from believing in and acting through the senses, being diluted with sensation. And then when we look at the material consciousness, we're talking about Egypt. We're translating metaphysically the word Egypt. When we look at the material consciousness translates into all things that exist is ultimately physical. So operating out of your material consciousness is the belief that everything that exists is ultimately physical. This is all that there is. This is all that I know. Once we leave here, this is what I leave behind, and there's nothing else. There's nothing else to discover. Believing and creating in your mind to believe that the only thing that exists and to understand is everything that you see is to do a disservice to your own spirit and to your own soul. Because there's a lot of things that relates to the nature of spirit that we can never understand in the physical and the physicality of things. There's a lot of ways in which we need to understand and connect with spirit that no aspect of the physical can take you to. You need to be able to produce a different vehicle to access and to find your freedom from this material matter. This is not all that we are. There's so much for us to understand. We're only at the tip of the iceberg, at the tip of the mountain top. But as you're standing at that mountain and you look down, you see that you have such a long way to go. Meaning, we've only begun to scratch the surface. And so if you stay fixed in the mind that all of what you see and understand is only things of physical, you're going to miss your encounter with spirit. Okay? Let's keep going. Judgments based on outer appearances, the senses produce in harmony, thoughts, jealousies, and limiting beliefs. So as long as we stay fixed, operating in the energy of Egypt, we limit ourselves. And then we produce jealousy and envy and hatred. All things that are contributed to understanding the race mind or race consciousness. Okay? So in order for us to expand, we have to come out of the realms of the flesh consciousness, the sense consciousness, and the material consciousness. And understanding that they all have their place and they all have their season. And the season and where spirit is shifting us to, none of these three things can go. Okay? Next, I want to look at the Egyptians. Because the story of Moses is really intertwined in understanding the Egyptians, to understanding their thought process, to understanding why they moved and operated the way that they operated, to understanding the disconnect between the Egyptians and the Hebrew Israelites, the Hebrews. Some of y'all call them the Hebrew Israelites, but them people ain't got it. Let's keep going. They ain't got it either. So when we look at the Egyptians, metaphysically, the Egyptians translates into being shut in, or restrained, misery, tribulation, distress. Egyptians signifies sense thoughts or thoughts that pertain to the subjective, meaning personal, subconscious, and an unawakened state. So the Egyptians is really dealing with bringing your sense consciousness into an awakened state. Okay? Bringing your senses to a place to where they aren't trapping you or confining you to any one experience. That you're able to freely move through your senses. Okay? That you're able to bring your senses to a subjected state of consciousness. That you're able to understand your senses through a subjected state of consciousness. Okay? So Egyptians represent shut in, being restrained, or being miserable. Okay? So if you find that the experience that you're operating in is restraining or is bringing you misery, right? Or is turbulent, 9 times out of 10, you're operating out of your sense consciousness, meaning only things that you can feel, see, taste, okay, touch. Spirit is desiring for you to go past your senses in order for you to untrap yourself. Let's look at the Israelites. When we look at the Israelites translates into the illuminated thoughts and consciousness which are undergoing spiritual discipline. So here we see really quickly the elevation from understanding the senses, meaning the Egyptians, And here we see the reason why Moses was sent to free the Israelites. The reason why Moses was sent to free the Israelites was because Spirit needed to get the thoughts of the people illuminated. When we look at the Israelites, or when we look at Israelites metaphysically, it translates into the illuminated thoughts and consciousness, which are undergoing spiritual discipline. So the sense consciousness, the flesh consciousness, and the material consciousness are all undergoing spiritual discipline. Okay? So what you think, what you feel, what you see, Spirit is calling for you to come up higher and to discipline those areas. How do you discipline those areas? By fortifying yourself within your spiritual understanding and your spiritual body. By bringing your spiritual nature into discipline. Okay? By bringing your spiritual nature into order. This is how we undo the sense consciousness or the flesh consciousness or the material consciousness. The Israelites' metaphysical symbolism goes on to say that the Israelites represent the thoughts in us that belong to the Israel consciousness. When we look at Israelites and Egyptian slavery, it translates into the thoughts that once had the illumination of spirit, but have gone down into and have become obscured by matter and material consciousness. So here is the call. I'm getting a call, y'all. Here we see that the Israelites were taken into slavery when they allowed the illumination of spirit to die down within them by playing and operating on the plane of material. Is it still messing up, T? Can you hear me now? Is that better? Y'all let me know if that's better. So here we see the Israelites taken into slavery and what that meant. Okay, perfect. So here we see the Israelites taken into slavery. And what that means for us is that the Israelites, the body, the consciousness, the subconsciousness was taken into slavery, right? When we allow the illuminated spirit that exists within us to be dimmed because we wanted to play and be fixed to the plane of material or the plane of matter, right? And now spirit is bringing us as a collective as well as the individual out of the plane of matter and bringing us into the realm of spirit, okay? Into the realm of the burning bush. Okay, into the realm of the mountaintop. Okay. So the Egyptians were taken into slavery when they allowed the illumination of spirit to fizzle out because it became obscured by matter and the material. Illumination simply means spiritual understanding and intuitive knowing. What do you know of yourself to be true? What do you know of your nature to be true? What aspects of yourself have you allowed to die down? What aspects of your spirit that were illuminated that you willfully allowed to die down because you wanted to play small? Because you wanted to fit in? Because you didn't want to stand out? Because you didn't want to learn your lessons? So spiritual illumination is a state of consciousness resulting from Holy Spirit baptism. From Holy Spirit baptism. When we look at the Holy Spirit, metaphysically, it translates into the source of all manifestations in the mind. This is exactly like the Father. Is like the Father in this degree. Okay? The Holy Spirit goes on to say that that the Holy Spirit is an idea when it arises in man's mind of something that he wants to do. The idea is the Son. He expresses this idea in divine thought. That is the Spirit going forth to accomplish what he sent out to go forth. Okay? So the Holy Spirit is not all of our being, nor is it the fullness of Christ, but it is an emanation or breath. So the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is the breath that we all have access to. It's the breath of life, right? That we wake up to every single day and that we go to sleep and transition into a state of dying in order for you to encounter another realm. So the Holy Spirit exists with you always. It's not something that somebody has to give to you, right? And it's not something that someone can take away from you. The Holy Spirit exists whether you have awareness of it or not, is existing. In fact, the Christendom church was predicated on the understanding of Azusa. When we look biblically and when we look at church history, Azusa really represented the moment in which Jesus gave access to the Holy Spirit. So the breath of life. If we want to make that make sense in this time, during the time that the church, that Spirit gave the black church Azusa, and they began to go forward in the movement of Azusa, was one aspect of Source giving us awareness of the breath of life. It animates every idea that we send forth. For you are the Father, and your ideas are the Son. And as you operate in the principle of the Son, your breath of life, your Holy Spirit goes forth to move about you, to go before you, to establish that which you set out. But in order for you to establish the right things within your kingdom, your thoughts had to be elevated or exalted. They had to be brought up to a higher state of consciousness, doing away with the flesh consciousness, the sense consciousness, and the material consciousness. And if we do away with those three things, operating and being fixed to the material plane of matter, you unlock it and you're able to move about. Okay? So spiritual illumination is a state of consciousness resulting from Holy Spirit baptism. So you illuminate your being when you come online and when you come into understanding the breath of life and how the breath of life that operates within you moves and operates in this world. The part that it plays in the experience that you're having. The part that it plays in the building up of the world that you see forming around you, or the complete collapse of the world that you see around you. Okay? So how is Spirit illuminating you on this new moon in Scorpio? The next word I want to look at is Jude. Since this is really where Kanye really focused a lot of his information, or focused a lot of his communication. When we look at the word Jew, Drew metaphysically translates into people belonging to the tribe and the kingdom of Judah. So Jews translates into people belonging to the tribe and the kingdom of Judah. When we look at the kingdom of God is simply the Christ consciousness, or the kingdom of heaven. So the Christ consciousness. Okay. So if you have awareness of your Christ consciousness, if you are operating and have access to the Christ consciousness that is ascending in all of us as it ascends in the sky, being the sun, Ra, however you want to describe it. If you have awareness of the Christ consciousness that lives within you, then my friend, you are a Jew. Okay? You are a Jew. So Jews translates into people belonging to the tribe and the kingdom, the Christ consciousness of Judah only. When we look at the metaphysical symbolism of Judah, Judah translates into the Hebrew meaning of the word Judah means praise Jehovah. It is evident that Judah represents the spiritual faculty that corresponds to accumulation or increase in the mental. This is done through prayer and praise. Did y'all hear me? So the Christ consciousness comes online, or the Jew represents the Christ consciousness that comes online through prayer and praise. Through prayer and praise. So how are you praying yourself into your spiritual illumination? How are you praising your way into your Christ consciousness? Okay? So prayer and praise. So Judah represents the spiritual faculty that corresponds to accumulation or increase in the mental. This is done through prayer and praise. Prayer should be a jubilant thanksgiving instead of a supplication. Thanksgiving translates into a rendering our grateful thoughts to God for his many blessings, or thanksgiving will keep the heart fresh. For thanksgiving may be likened to rain falling upon steady soil, refreshing it and increasing it in its productiveness. Prayer and praise quickens the mind and makes it draw like a magnet, that from the realm of cause which fulfills one's desire. Okay? So Judah represents praise. And we use Judah in order to increase the Christ consciousness that is ascending through all of us. And if you are doing this, my dear, you are a Jew. Okay? When we look at the Jew in its highest aspect, it symbolizes divine ideas or spiritual consciousness. It can also translate into the mind of humanity. In the New Testament, the Jew symbolizes our established religious thoughts and a system of worship. The Jews symbolize our religious thoughts, and the Gentiles symbolize our worldly thoughts. And so here, the message of Moses is really coming forward to tell us that it's time to deal with our worldly thoughts and our spiritual thoughts. Okay? And not necessarily to divide them, but to integrate them. And to bring them both up, to ascend them both up with our high thinking or high thoughts. Okay? Fixed traditional, Jews also represent fixed traditional religious thoughts. The Jews that followed the letter of law rather than the living truth that seeks to unite spiritual harmony, both Jews and Gentiles. So there's the validation. The Spirit is not trying to get you to divide your worldly and spiritual thoughts, but to integrate them. Because Jews represents the traditional religious thoughts, or the Jew that followed the letter of the law rather than the living truth that seeks to unite and harmonize both the Jew and the Gentile. The Gentile being the world, the Gentile symbolizing our worldly thoughts, and the Jews symbolizing our religious or spiritual thoughts. So bringing them both under one accord, not dividing them, but bringing them both into harmony. Okay? So, Spirit is saying, Stop being so fixed to follow the law of man and follow the law of truth, the law of spiritual truth, which is unification, which is bringing all aspects of ourselves into harmony, by bringing all aspects of the collective into harmony. Okay? Next, I want to move to, and then I'm closing, the Pharaoh. Because here we see Moses dealing with the Pharaoh, going directly to the Pharaoh. And you can liken that same way, Kanye going to the Pharaoh and speaking directly to the Pharaoh saying, let my people go. When we look metaphysically at the Pharaoh represents or metaphysically translates into Ra, the sun. He is the ruler of the solar plexus, the sun center, and the subconsciousness. So the subconsciousness is not all darkness. It's not void of darkness. There is a light that sits in the middle of that void or in the middle of that darkness that can come online at any point you willfully make the decision to bring it online. So the Pharaoh deals with the solar plexus. When we look at the sun translates into spiritual intelligence. Light is always a symbol of intelligence, right? The moon symbolizes the intellect. Receives all of its light from the spiritual intelligence. So I'm going to ask you, how is your intelligence set up under this new moon in Scorpio? How is your intelligence set up? And is it tried and fortified by your spiritual intellect? Do you have enough spiritual intellect to decide what your intellect is? Okay? The sun symbolizes spiritual intelligence. So as the sun becomes illuminated within this divine mind that we all encompass, is the sun illuminating itself and radiating with radiation, giving us and pouring spiritual intelligence into us. But if we do not bring our own spiritual intelligence online, we'll never receive the intellect that's coming off of the sun. We'll never understand what's happening. Okay? We'll never be able to receive all of the information, all of the light from the spiritual intelligence. So to some degree, you have to bring your moon and the sun into harmony. They have to come into harmony because one supports the other. One can undo the other if it's not balanced. Okay? So it goes on to say that the Pharaoh, when you combine both the sun and the moon, this is the source of all light. Our individual mind is quickened to the extent that we make it receptive to the unfolding of the light of spirit. When we bring both our sun and our moon into harmony, when we bring both our intellect and our spiritual intellect into harmony, okay, we quicken ourselves and we make ourselves receptive to the inflooding of the light of source, okay, or the light of spirit. Pharaoh being the sun, Pharaoh, aka the sun, being in Egypt, shows us that the light of the sun, of the righteousness is veiled to us in our lives by playing on a lower or on the sense plane. So we place our own self into subjugation, right? Or we bring Pharaoh into our own existence when we willfully make the decision to play in the lower planes of ourselves. Or when we get fixed in the sense plane or fixed in the material plane. Then the sun has to come and put pressure on you in order for you to move. in order for you to get the walking, in order for you to understand that the land that you're standing on is not producing, and therefore you got to migrate to another area. The sun has to come and place you, okay, or shut you in, okay. It has to take you into the world of the Egyptians and shut you into your own experience, okay, because you're choosing to fix yourself on the material plane of sense consciousness. Okay? An example, when Joseph was being sold into slavery, this signifies our own spiritual consciousness, or it signifies that our own spiritual consciousness is being bartered away, that we may enjoy the things, or that we may enjoy the things of sense, and that our life forces are being spent in their gratification. I'm going to read that again. We can look to Joseph in the Bible as being an example of operating on the lower or the sense plane. With Joseph being sold into slavery, this signifies our spiritual consciousness being bartered away, that we may enjoy the things of sense, of the senses, and that the life forces that we encompass are being spent in gratification. So if your life force is depleting, you need to look at how you are spending your currency. Okay? Spirit is coming to tell us that we are bartering away our spiritual nature for things that we can experience in the right now. We as a collective are bartering away our spiritual inheritance for the things that you can receive right now. Does that make sense? Spirit is coming to say that you are spending your life force as gratification. What are you gratifying? If you are spending your life force, what are you gratifying? What are you receiving from spending your life force? What are you receiving from spending your spiritual inheritance? Moses and the Israelites' journey consisted of going from the wilderness of Mount Sinai to ending their journey in the land of the Moab. When we translate or metaphysically look at the wilderness of Mount Sinai, it translates into the state of consciousness in which we find the exalted place in the mind. So this new moon in Scorpio is bringing us to the to the wilderness of Mount Sinai. This Scorpio new moon paired with the solar eclipse is bringing us as a collective and you as the individual into the wilderness of Mount Sinai. Meaning bringing you to a state of consciousness in which you find the exalted places within your mind, within your experience, within your senses. Okay? It goes on to say that the wilderness of Mount Sinai is a place of consciousness where we come into conscious communion with the divine. So this new moon in Scorpio is bringing you to a place where you have conscious communion with the divine. And nobody else can give you that. Not an astrologer, not your preacher, not your bishops, not your popes, not your political parties, not your favorite celebrities, not your favorite master teachers. Only being in the wilderness of Mount Sinai. can bring you to a place where you have conscious communion with God. So this tells you that you're not going to find God in the light. You're going to find it in the darkness of yourself, and the voids that exist within yourself, and the dark corners of your mind, and the dark corners of your subconscious and of your heart spaces, and the dark corners of the wombs that you create out of. This is where you will find conscious communion with God. Because it's only in the wilderness where spirit can get you still enough to listen. It's only in your tower moments where spirit can get you still enough to pay attention, to see yourself, to see the people around you and the things and how they move and operate around you. It's only in the wilderness of Sinai that you're going to find your conscious communion with the divine that you are. Not one that's in the sky waiting to ascend, but the one here waiting to ascend. Okay? Moses and the Israelites walked in this wilderness for 40 years. 40 symbolically, if we look at the symbolism of how it translates in the Kabbalah, 40 translates into meaning demonstration. It translates into meaning demonstration, which is the action or process of showing the existence or truth of something by giving proof of the evidence. I'm going to read that again. So these 40 years, right, 40 not being a specific number, was all speaking in allegory. So these 40 years that source had Moses and the Israelites journeying through the wilderness of Mount Sinai, what was really happening was Spirit taking them through the action or the process of proofing their existence, or proofing the existence of the Creator that they believed in at the time, or proofing their experience. So this 40 years, I hear Spirit saying, taking us back to that 2008 up until now. That 2008 journey, okay, that 2008 journey up until right now, that journey, what this journey has truly been, it has been Spirit demonstrating you to you. It has been Spirit demonstrating your experience. It has been Spirit proofing you in action so that you are able to really see the truth of your existence. So that you are able to see the evidence of your purpose, or the evidence of the exalted state of mind that Spirit is taking you through. So the 40 symbolically translates into meaning a demonstration. So the Israelites journeying through the mounts, through the desert of Mount Sinai, or through the wilderness of Mount Sinai, was their process of proving the evidence of who they said that they were. Proving the evidence of the power that they said that they came with. Proving the evidence of the intentions that they set forward. Proving the call of freedom that they were making. Proving the call of liberation that they were making. Proving the words that Moses spoke to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." During this journey or story of Moses will go on to put together a large army consisting of 603,550 million, which reduces Kabbalistically into the number 1, which signifies new beginnings. Okay? So the story of the army of Moses is really alerting us to the physical and spiritual journey that we as human beings are embarking on, that is making us anew, that is taking us from demonstration to rebirth. Okay? From demonstration to never lacking for nothing. From demonstration to being sure of who Spirit told you that you were. From demonstration to proof that everything that Spirit had been showing you, has been showing you since 2008, was real. The demonstration of your gifts coming online. The demonstration of your actions coming into order. The demonstration of you bringing into harmony your lower man, the lower aspect of you, and the higher aspects of your nature. So here we see, out of this demonstration, or out of this season of proving, Spirit is bringing us to a season of newness and of change and of rebirth and of transformation. There's something that I want to read y'all, and then I'm closing. And it's from this book, if any of you ever want to pick it up. It's from a book called A Metaphysical and Symbolic Interpretations of the Bible by Mildred Mann. And it goes on to say, this portion that I want to read y'all. The book of Numbers is divided into 3 distinct sections. The first section, the first 10 chapters concern the journey of the Israelites into the wilderness of Mount Sinai. Okay, we looked at Mount Sinai. Did I give y'all that? I think we went over that already. I don't want to keep going over it because I'm already been on here long. So it consists of the journey from Mount Sinai when we look at Sinai, metaphysically, it translates into a cliff, a deep ravine, sharp or jagged. It also goes on to say that Sinai metaphysically translates into hold on, y'all. It translates into the wilderness or the desert of Sinai, signifies the state of consciousness in which we find the exalted place in mind that the mountains call Sinai. So here we see the children of Israel go through the first journey of finding their way through the wilderness of Sinai, which is their thoughts or their high thoughts, their consciousness coming into an exalted place or coming into an exalted state. The second part of their migration to and living in the wilderness of Paran. So the second part of their journey consisted of them going into the land of Paran. When we look metaphysically at Paran, it translates into the multitude of unseemly, confused, and undisciplined thoughts of the subconscious mind. So as the Israelites took on the journey of Mount Sinai in the wilderness, here we see Spirit bringing our consciousness into a high state of exalted thoughts. And through going through this stage of high exalted thoughts, it brings us into the realm of the Paran, which has us going through the multitudes of seemingly confused and undisciplined thoughts that exist within the subconscious mind in order for us to bring them into harmony and for us to bring them into order. And so after the Israelites leaves the wilderness of Paran, finally they end their arrival at Moab. When we look at Moab, Moab metaphysically translates into meaning the seed of the Father or flowing from the Father. Okay? It goes on to say that Ruth, who represents the love of the natural soul of God and from whom David and Jesus were descended, was a Moabitess. So here we see when the Israelites land and come into the land of Moab, we see the final climax of their journey or of their ascension. And here we see them take on the mind of Moab, or coming into the seat of the Father, or coming to the center of the Father, or coming into relationship with the Father. Moab represents the body and the most external conditions of life. Okay, this is something good, and at least it was something good, right? And studying the external conditions of life. So really understanding the conditions of how you operate, understanding the conditions of your experience, understanding the conditions of the world that we live in, understanding the conditions of your mind. So here we see the Israelites end their journey and the state of really understanding their conditions. And through understanding their conditions, they ascend from out of the land of Moab, and they ascend into a Moabitess. And when we look at the metaphysical symbolism of the Moabitess, who is also, who is it, T? It's the Asiatic woman, okay, of the Moorish American. That's how y'all know that we really, we really are, it's us. So here we see the Israelites in their journey, and at the final level of their ascension, they're transcended from a Moab and they transform into a Moabitess. And when we look at the symbolism of the Moabitess, it translates into a female descendant of the Moab. Ruth, the Moabitess. Okay? She became the great-grandmother of David. Metaphysically, Moabitess translates into the carnal mind as it pertains to the soul of man. Ruth the Moabitess symbolizes human love raised to the divine because of its willingness to leave the love of the unreal. And so we ascend our nature through understanding the alchemical encounter that Moses had by raising our love of leaving behind what's not real. Okay? By leaving behind the love of humanity. By leaving behind the love of the senses or of the material plane. Okay? And focusing our energy on that which is real. The only thing that exists and that is truly real in the experience of the material is the Holy Spirit, or the breath of life. And Spirit is asking under this new moon in Scorpio, how are you using your spiritual development? How are you operating in your spiritual development? Exodus told us the amazing story of how God sent Moses to deliver his people from the Egyptians. But ultimately, it told the story of spiritual development. And one message, or one call that I feel the message of Moses is really urging us into the power of transformation and into the realm of darkness, urging you to sit with your voids, to sit with your own structures that you built up in yourself, to sit with the unreal worlds and the unreal emotions and senses that you've created out of nothingness. And Spirit is desiring for you to bring both of those things into harmony with each other, because they're all making for this spiritual journey that we're all encountering, right? And I want to make sure that I said everything that I wanted to say before we go. So the place of Sinai, the place or the purpose of this new moon in Scorpio, I believe, is initiating us into a higher realm of our spiritual development and our spiritual intelligence. And it's really up to us to accept this alchemical encounter, or operate as you've been operating, trying to build new worlds off of old foundations and old diagrams and old blueprints, when Spirit is rolling out a new commandment. Okay? The commandment of ascension, the commandment of higher thinking, the commandment of trying your intellect by your spiritual intelligence and bringing them both into harmony with each other. And then I want to close our Music Mancy meditation. Hold on one second, y'all. I want to close with our Music Mancy meditation for today. I want to close with our Music Mancy meditation for today, and what Spirit is really saying to us, and the wisdom that Spirit is saying to us through my Music Mancy meditation, which is Spirit communicating with us through the tool of music. And so two songs stepped forward for today's new moon in Scorpio. The first one is being Drake, the song You and the Six. And this song is really letting you know and letting us know as a collective that this transformation, this death, rebirth, transformation that we are experiencing and will experience as we come into eclipse season is by way of the Divine Mother. And the last message from this song is Spirit is really desiring for you to take on and to do the work of the shadow as it relates to the Divine Mothers within your worlds, and the Divine Mothers as it relates to your upbringing. Maybe they're not your physical mothers. Maybe they're aunts who played the mother role, or cousins who played the mother role. Spirit is really desiring for us to really deal with the shadow work concerning our mothers, or the divine feminine, okay? Is he a Scorpio? Look at that. Thanks, T. Drake is a Scorpio, so boop. So the shadow work king, I think, if you ask me. And then the last Music Mancy meditation song comes from an artist named Shamika Dwight, and the song title is The Truth of It All. The message from this song is your intuition will not deceive you. If you are unsure how you are supposed to be moving in this season, you need to be sure that you are sharpening your intuition so that you are able to trust it as we move forward, especially as we come into 2021. The next message is the Divine Mother is saying that I gave you a reason to be lonely. I gave you a reason to self-isolate. I gave you, I put you in the realms of the tower moment in order for those experiences to draw you deeper into yourself, in order for you to sit with yourself, not for you to continue to look for ways to outrun the self. So the Divine Mother is saying, I gave you a reason to be lonely. Take it and sit with yourself. The next message of this song tells us that your heart won't lead you wrong, even in the places and the things that your mind tries to ignore. Deal with your mind. If you deal with your mind, you are dealing with your subconscious. In turn, you are dealing with your heart. Deal with the heart matters. The next message is if you are caught in between your heart and your mind, trust your soul for the truth of it all. Trust your soul for the truth of what's happening. Trust your soul for the truth of the experience of the people and the things that you are encountering. The next message from this song tells us to stop floating between truth and confusion. Stop floating between truth and confusion. Figure out what your truth is so that you can determine where the confusion operates and who the confusion operates with. The next message from this Music Mancy meditation song tells you to stop building connections on illusions under this new moon in Scorpio. If you know that you have built connections on illusions that you built up in your mind or in your heart, Spirit is desiring for you to deal with them and to do away with them. Okay, so stop building connections on illusions. The next message is craving the world that we founded. Craving the world we made founded on yesterday's illusions won't be enough to carry us forward. I'm going to read that one more time. Craving the world we made founded on yesterday's illusions will not be enough to carry you forward. We're going to have to do a new thing in order to generate a new experience and a new world. And it's happening with or without your permission. And then the last message is learn to trust your soul. Learn to trust your soul for the truth of it all, for the truth in everything, even finding the truth in the lies that you tell yourself and the people around you. Trust your soul for the truth of it all. And last but not least, y'all, use this new moon in Scorpio to take you behind the veil, to help you understand the veil, to help you connect deeper into the veil. Peace, y'all. Until next time, I thank y'all for joining me, and I hope this message finds you where you are. I hope that this message meets you in your experience and that it gives you clarity moving forward. But if y'all do nothing else, I implore you to take on the alchemical encounter of Moses. And until next time, y'all, peace. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And y'all make sure y'all share, comment, and like, y'all. Until next time, come behind the veil. Go behind the veil, y'all.
His